Hi, I'm Francesca Rudkin and welcome to Rialto Channel Podcast. So the new year has rolled around and no doubt over the summer you've spent some time taking stock of the past year and thinking about the next. You might have decided to make some changes when it comes to how you live your life and how you can contribute to the global crises we face today. In that case, you'll be interested in my guest today, Antoinette Wilson, and her documentary, Living the Change, Inspiring Stories of a Sustainable Future. Welcome, Antoinette. Thanks for talking to us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about the doco, what our viewers can expect.
Living the Change is a New Zealand film. It's about New Zealanders who are doing just that, living the change. My co-director and I spent 2 years meeting different people from around the country who have chosen ways to live or who are part of projects that contribute to the community in order to make them more resilient. And that's what we were interested in. As you say, we're facing many crises, and in our view, what we all need at an individual level is to be more resilient, and that comes in many ways, and we wanted to explore lots of different ways in which you can be more resilient.
Was there anything that sort of personally affected you or drove you to make this film? I mean, there's some very obvious reasons why you'd want to make a film like this.
That probably came from a few different directions, but I think for me the key one, and this is the case I think for a lot of people these days, I had just in my case quite relatively minor health issues, but it really made me start to investigate, why I was unwell and what was making me unwell, and that led me down the path of wondering where my food came from, or needing to understand better where my food came from. And this was 10 or 12 years ago, and it was a little bit harder to come to that information, whereas now, we've just got there's so much more thought and energy going into this and much more awareness. But that for me was pivotal, just the realisation that my food wasn't the food that I was getting from the supermarket essentially wasn't the food that wasn't nourishing me. And that understanding that leads you down many paths, I discovered, and really leads you to a much better understanding of how disconnected we are, so as a society, from where our things come from, not just our food, but everything that we bring into our life. And that became more and more important to me, and understanding that more. This film was just as much as it's about sharing these stories. For me, it was educational. I wanted to understand more as well.
What do you want people to get out of the film when they watch it?
I think the key message, we didn't set out to make a feature film, we set out to make a series of short films, telling these individual stories, but it really came together to a feature film. And what really strongly came through for us from everyone we spoke to, and each of them, is coming at this from quite a different perspective, but what really strongly came to us as a result of making the film was the need for everybody to consume less. Everybody in the Western world, those of us who are using more energy than many people who really aren't living, in the way that we would consider comfortably. So consumption, basically, and consumption is many things. It's not just what we buy; it's the energy that we use. In our houses, the energy we'll use to drive to get our cars going. So it's really, I guess for me, the big thing was that I just started thinking about my connection to everything in my life.
Because it's fascinating, the stories that you tell, but they're also quite extreme stories. And, a lot of us realistically can't, as much as I'd love to go off and just set up a permaculture garden somewhere beautiful, a lot of us can't just up sticks and go and do it. But I suppose seeing people make big changes actually is quite encouraging to others to make small changes.
That's really key, and that's really what we wanted to what we wanted to do was highlight lots of different ways of approaching this, because nobody can up and go, oh my goodness, we need to make all of these big changes, and I need to change everything. And that's very overwhelming and disempowering, I think, when you become fully aware of just how urgent and problematic the situation small changes. So it might be that this person has the opportunity to go out and, move out to the country and grow a huge, 5-acre food forest. But this person lives in an apartment building, and perhaps for them, what that means is just growing some veggies or some herbs on the, on the windowsill. But that awareness starts making you think about other ways that you can make changes in your life. So it might be that I can't grow veggies where I've just moved to just yet. It's too soon to start a little garden, and it'll be a very little garden. So I'm ordering a vegetable box from Ubi out of our own backyard, where it's $40 a week, and they send me organic, beautiful veggies, and I know that they've come from growers who are working hard to care for the soil and care for their crops and care for the nutrition of the food they send me. So it's these little, we can easily feel disempowered about just what kind of change that we can make, but actually we're very, very powerful. Every time we spend $1, the choice of where we spend that dollar is creating change.
So there's two things really. There's consume less, but two, make better decisions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
what you consume. Yeah.
So there are so many people out there with different opinions and research and views on these topics. How did you, as a filmmaker, how did you and Jordan decide who to put in the film?
Well, like I said, we didn't set out to make a feature film, so it was a little bit. It's an interesting one for us looking back on this film, because you've probably noticed it's very rural focused. So there's a lot of people who've sort of who've got land, or probably in a different situation to the majority of us, and that wasn't actually intentional on our part. And in fact, our next series will be city focused. We chose people. So initially, we did online research, and what we found was, we would find someone online who was doing something that really kind of sparked our interest. So I have a real interest in composting toilets. Funny thing to have a big interest in, but I
everybody needs a hobby, Antoinette. Yeah.
I feel very passionate about this. This beautiful resource that we create, which we're not in the habit of thinking is useful, and this beautiful fresh water that we mix it with and create this really toxic problem, which is how it's described in the film by our interviewee. And I just thought that was, I loved what they were doing, this couple who practiced, human manure composting. And so I was very keen to include a story like that, and I was lucky enough to happen to find them online. And what we found, they were in Wanaka, and what we found was, so we went to Wanaka to film with them, and we stayed with some friends down there who happened to have a friend who was doing something else that was really interesting, and they happened to have a friend who was doing something else that was really interesting, and these people weren't online. So really it was finding people through word of mouth and through research, and just really, we interviewed some people who we loved their stories and we loved what they were doing, but it didn't quite gel as part of the story we ended up telling and living the change. So there are so many people out there in New Zealand doing incredible things. And you could just be constantly making films about the great things that are happening out there that aren't necessarily, big stories online, or they don't have an online presence, or they're not, people that we necessarily hear about regularly.
There's so much conflicting information out there, especially when it comes to climate change and the environment and things, and sometimes I think that's paralysing for people. How do you feel about sort of information and misinformation and even corporates and global companies getting on board and putting their spin on things? It does make it tricky for people, doesn't it?
It's really tricky. It's often disempowering. It's incredibly confusing. I think it's really unhelpful to call it, I think it's really unhelpful to call it a war on climate. There's what Charles Eisenstein, who's interviewed in the film, says in one of his books. We've got the war on drugs and the war on cancer and the war on climate. We've got the war on this, that, and the other thing. He says it's no more effectual than the war in Iraq. It's so ineffectual to go to war against something like this. That's not the point. Who's right? Are the scientists right, or are the climate deniers right, or are the who's right, who's wrong? That's not the point. The point, and it's actually not the point whether the climate is changing or not. the point is that we are living in a way that is incredibly disconnected and unhealthy for us and for the planet. So I don't believe we should be making changes because we believe that climate change is happening. I believe we should be making changes because we can see, and I think we can all feel if we really look for it, that this isn't the right way. And the Earth does not have limitless resources. It's not. The resources we're using are not infinite. It has to end. And instead of just sort of debating and fighting and arguing about what's right and what's wrong, what we need to see is that there's only one way forward, and it's a way that is going to be that's going to be nurturing to us and to the planet that is our only planet A, number one, the only one that we have.
No planet B. Hey, tell me a little bit about your relationship with Jordan. Is this the first film you guys have co-directed together?
No, well, it's the first feature film we've co-directed together. So Happen Film started in 2015 when we were. I became part of a project that Jordan was filming in Australia called A Simpler Way, and that was our first feature film. I ended up coming on as a writer on that, but I was actually one of the interviewees in the film, so it was my first time on camera, and it turned out that I wasn't very good in front of the camera. I decided that wasn't the place for me, but I really enjoyed the behind the scenes. I really enjoyed that, everything that was going on and creating that story, and in that case we were exploring simple living. We were exploring what it would look like to live within the resources that planet Earth does actually have available to us, and sort of not thinking of them as resources, but actually sort of more connected with what a healthy way of being. And it was such an exciting project to be part of, and I just loved the filmmaking side of it. And while we were, over the course of it, was a year-long project making the documentary, and over the course of that year, Jordan and I started making short films to just explore some of the issues in more detail that we were covering in that film. And we really discovered that there's a bit of a niche on YouTube for those kind of films, of course, storytelling about the issues, but solutions-focused. And we really saw the need for solution-focused storytelling because, it's the stories, all of the mythologies that are sort of ingrained in us about how we should be, how we should live. We need to change those, and there's a beautiful way of beginning that process through telling stories in film. And YouTube, is this extraordinary environment now that where people like us who come with no training, but a lot of passion, and in Jordan's case, a cinematographer and editor, a lot of innate skill. And so we've been really fortunate. We've had our YouTube subscribers are over 90,000 now, and we've got we received the most beautiful feedback from people. We had someone write the other day saying, the films are changing my whole perspective on how to be in the world and how to live. And when we receive that kind of feedback, which, we're really lucky to receive a lot of, we feel very, very motivated to keep on doing it. So constantly, working, upskilling and developing our skills as storytellers and filmmakers.
So you can catch all those short films on Happen Films if you have a look for that on YouTube. And also you can catch Living the Change, Inspiring Stories of a Sustainable Future on Friday the 18th of January at 8:30 p.m. on Rialto Channel. Antoinette, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.